Hey everyone, my name is Prince and welcome back to another video talking about Dinosaur King. Yeah, that's right everyone, I'm back. Unfortunately, I didn't die at the end of 2023, so it seems like you're stuck with me for another year. Now, we're actually going to be talking about something a little bit interesting today because we're going to be discussing the Dinosaur King Iceberg. Icebergs are a pretty popular topic on YouTube, but usually they're discussing really weird and often disturbing things. Luckily, the Dinosaur King Iceberg doesn't have a lot of disturbing things on it, and it's really just a bunch of interesting things that you might not know about. Now, I didn't actually make this iceberg myself, so of course I've got to give credit to the one who did, and this person is honestly one of the biggest pillars of the Dinosaur King community, the incredible Mouselet. Since integrating myself into the Dinosaur King community, I've discovered that she is a literal wellspring of Dinosaur King knowledge. And not only did she make this iceberg with the help of a few other members of the Dinosaur King community as well, very helpfully she also put in the description of the Reddit post where she posted it, a list of what every single thing in the iceberg means, which is incredibly helpful considering I don't know what half of this stuff means. So thank you Mouse for making this and for providing the list of all of the different things in this iceberg so people like me can go over them. So without further ado, let's get into talking about the Dinosaur King Iceberg. So here's the iceberg itself. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different tiers to go through. So, let's get right into it. Now, the first tier is really self-explanatory, obviously. We have what are basically the 4 different main aspects of Dinosaur King. We have the anime, we have the arcade, we have the trading card game, and we have the DS. And, of course, we have the fact that it was dubbed, the anime was dubbed by 4Kids. Because, obviously, the anime was originally in Japanese, because you know, it's an anime. So yeah, there's not really much to talk about in the first tier because they're really self-explanatory. So yeah, moving on to tier 2. So we've moved on from the sort of things that, you know, even casual fans know. Now we're moving on to stuff that, you know, decent fans know about. Now, I would like to say that I'm not sure I agree with the ordering of some of these, but then again, it is going to be different for every person. Because obviously, some people will know some things and some people won't, so, you know, every person would have ordered it differently. So anyway, moving on to the second tier, we have the 2-volume manga, which is the only manga that was ever translated into English, and I'm pretty sure it's the one where Mini King and Benjamin the Irritator come from. I think that might be what the anime is based on, but don't quote me on that. Toys is, again, pretty self-explanatory. It's just referring to the toys that were made for Dinosaur King, you know. There were quite a lot of them. I've got one on display back there. Dino Man was the alter ego of Max's father, Spike Taylor, and I gotta say, I'm really disappointed that Dino Man didn't appear in the anime, because I think that would have made for a really good episode. Spectre's gay, that's just really referring to how Spectre behaves in Season 2, and a lot of people think he has a crush on Seth, so yeah, that's there, I guess. The anime Torvosaurus card was apparently included in one of the Season 2 DVDs, and it's a bit weird that out of all the dinosaur cards they could have included in the DVD for Season 2, it was that one. Then again, I guess it kind of makes sense, considering Torvosaurus was, I'm pretty sure, the first new dinosaur that was introduced in Season 2 with the Spectral Space Pirates, so I guess it makes sense. The different designs, that's pretty self-explanatory, but it basically refers to the difference in design between the dinosaurs and the characters in the arcade and the dinosaurs and the characters in the anime. Roars and Other Media is, again, you know, pretty self-explanatory. It's just that the sound effects for the dinosaurs in Dinosaur King have been used in other things as well. Apparently, the roar for the Allosaurus in Dinosaur King was used in the Owl House Episode 3. The director is something we're not going to talk about, and neither should anyone who actually knows what that refers to if they have a shred of decency. Moving on. Now, the Isosaurus in Persia and the Seismosaurus move card sort of refers to where those cards came from. Because the Isosaurus card in the Persia arc in Season 2 is the only dinosaur card that was seen in a different era other than the modern day. And the Seismosaurus move card was apparently, like, embedded in the Seismosaurus skeleton. But to be honest, this isn't really much of like a plot hole or anything, considering that we know that all of the dinosaur capsules were lost like throughout all of space and time, so it's not really much of a plot hole. For example, the Isosaurus is the only one that we see in a different time period, but there could be like hundreds of others. Although, to be honest, I think the existence of the Isosaurus card in general, rather than its location, is more of a plot hole than anything. Because in Season 1, we learn that there are 36 dinosaur cards in the collection, which presumably means that the ancients only managed to get 36 different species of dinosaur while they were in the Cretaceous. But if the Isosaurus card was also part of the collection, that means there's more than 36. To be honest, I never really liked the idea that they limited it to 36 dinosaur cards because, you know, that's really limiting for, you know, expansion on lore and stuff. But regardless, that's tier 2 done. Moving on to tier 3. Now we're moving on to stuff that is a little bit more in depth and you need to be a little bit more of a fan to know about. First off, we have the 4-frame manga, which is basically a collection of 4-frame mangas which were not really very serious. They were just like little joke mangas and stuff like that, really. They were basically just little comedic panels with Max and Rex goofing off, basically. The time of the anime is again a pretty self-explanatory one. It's just really the consideration of, you know, when does the anime actually take place? Because I'm pretty sure it was never actually stated, you know, what year it takes place in. Variants refers to some of the arcade cards that actually featured variants of the characters in different outfits. For example, there were some variations where, like, Zoe was wearing Shear's outfit and stuff like that. Now, the alternate death grind is actually something that I did know about beforehand, and it's actually pretty weird. You guys remember the move Death Grind, the one that Anchiceratops used in the anime? Yeah, what I didn't know for a very long time is that that move is actually censored, which actually ties into another thing in tier 3, which is censorship. Basically, the original Death Grinder move was the move we all know and love, where the dinosaur would hit the opponent with its tail and then grind them along the floor. But the original version actually had one more little aspect of it. After pushing them along the floor, and I'm not making this up, the dinosaur would turn around and fart on its opponent. And that was actually part of the anime that was censored in the 4Kids dub. And I find that really weird, honestly. I really don't get why they would make that part of a move card. It's just weird. Now, Dinosaur actually refers to something that was on the original Dinosaur King website, which was a series of little mini-games featuring unique and never-before-seen chibi versions of some of the dinosaurs. And honestly, I had no idea about this before doing research for this video, and some of them actually look really cool. Encyclopedias refers to the encyclopedias for the Dinosaur King dinosaurs that featured renders of them. I don't know if there were multiple encyclopedias. The only one I know is the one from the DS game. Animation errors is pretty self-explanatory, although in all my time watching Dinosaur King, I don't think I've ever seen an animation error. The Taiwanese new 5th edition refers to a bunch of arcade cards that were, you guessed it, Taiwanese exclusive. The tournament-specific machines, again, pretty self-explanatory. They were arcade machines that were given, you know, special designs for tournaments. The non-anime characters, again, pretty self-explanatory. It just refers to characters within Dinosaur King that weren't featured in the anime. These include characters like Gomer from the arcade game, and of course, a bunch of the DS characters, including the D-site attendant Minmi, and of course, Ovi Chad McGee. Now, the RFID chip refers to a special chip that was actually required for the arcade machines to work. For those of you who weren't aware, getting a working Dinosaur King arcade machine is astonishingly difficult given the sort of complex parts that make it work. Now, the Schleich Majungasaurus is actually the only thing that Mouse hasn't written a description for in the tier 3 section, but after a quick bit of research, I actually discovered that Schleich, who are a toy manufacturing company, actually released a Majungasaurus figure in 2022 with the exact same design as the Dinosaur King Majungasaurus, which is honestly kind of weird. But anyway, that's kind of cool, I guess. Anyway, that's everything in tier 3, so it's time to dive even deeper with tier 4. Starting off, we have Siamotyrannus and the 2000 strength Triceratops, which were both unreleased dinosaurs that are still present in the code of the arcade game. It's actually pretty sad that Siamotyrannus wasn't released for the arcade, because the Dinosaur King design of that looks really cool. ODR Part 2 refers to Operation Dinosaur Rescue Part 2, which was a variation of the arcade game. I assume this was some sort of either unreleased or just really rare variation of the arcade game that not a lot of people played. Postcards refers to Dinosaur King postcards that apparently had working barcodes for the arcade game on them. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Misprints is pretty self-explanatory. It was just misprints for the cards. French comics is pretty self-explanatory as well. They were comics for Dinosaur King featured apparently in some of the French magazines. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will get excited when they see the word hybrids, but this seemingly had nothing to do with the arcade or the show or really anything important. These were just something in the French magazines that I talked about just a minute ago, where you had to sort of look at the dinosaur and guess what it was made of. Although, as well as that, Mini King from the manga is actually part Triceratops, part Styracosaurus, so yeah, there's that as well, I guess. The triple slash cards are actually something really cool from the arcade game, because you guys remember the triangular Velociraptor card from the anime? Well, that's basically what the triple slash cards were. As far as I know, these were elemental triangular move cards which came with other elemental dinosaurs. For example, there was a triple slash card for Giganotosaurus, which is a fire type, and the triple slash move card contained Blazing Spin, Fire Cannon, and Fire Bomb. Honestly, these looked really cool, and I'm kinda sad that I never stumbled upon them when I was playing the arcade game back in the day, although I'm pretty sure they were sort of made after the time that I was playing the arcade. Variant endings apparently refers to the arcade game endings, which apparently featured different animations sometimes, which is, you know, interesting and kind of cool, I guess. Microraptor actually refers to an unreleased arcade game move card where a Microraptor would actually prevent your opponent from attacking. To be honest, that sounds really overpowered, and that may actually be the reason why they didn't actually release it. And of course, the reason we know about the Microraptor move card is because there's no card for it, but the animation of the move itself is actually present in the code of the arcade game. And by the way, can I just quickly say how much I despise the design of Microraptor in the anime? It looks hideous. It genuinely looks like they couldn't be bothered to fucking texture the thing, and they just went, yeah, white. Now, son or grandson actually refers to Gomer, and if you don't know, Gomer was actually the main villain of the sort of later arcade games where the super dinosaurs came from. He was the one with the EO car carrier, and the reason this is a thing is because there's some inconsistencies as to whether Gomer's meant to be Spectre's son or Spectre's grandson. There's sources that say both. But either way, I really like Gomer, and I especially like his dinosaur EO car carrier. I love its design in Dinosaur King. Now, the OG move names apparently refers to the fact that in Japanese and in the first arcade, some of the move card names were different. Now, I don't actually have any examples of this, but this could also be used to refer to the anime. Because in the anime, Deathfire, which is Saurophaganax and Black T-Rex's move, gets renamed to Fire Scorcher because they didn't want to use the word death in the anime because it was for kids. And the same goes for Death Grind as well, although they didn't even bother renaming that one. They just didn't fucking say the name of the move card. And as a result, and I actually mentioned this in the move card compilation video, Death Grind is actually the only move card in Season 1 that isn't named in the anime. Now, the Rainbow Pachycephalosaurus variant actually refers to the Pachycephalosaurus secret cards from the arcade, because there were actually different variations of them that featured some cool rainbow effects for their eyes and stuff. They looked pretty cool. I've never seen them, obviously. I've only seen pictures of them. Secret arcade cards are very hard to come by, obviously. The signed DMC cards actually refer to DT membership cards, which were signed by Hiromichi Sato and Captain Kossi. Now, I did a bit of research, and apparently Hiromichi Sato was the Japanese singer who performed the Japanese version of the anime intro. So having a card signed by him would be pretty damn cool. But as for Captain Kossi, I tried to research who this person was, and I couldn't find anything. If Mouse is watching, I'm sure she'll put who that is in the comments. Now, to end off Tier 4, we have the Archaeopteryx Charm Effect, which was a move card that actually was released to the public, unlike the Microraptor one. Now, I'm not entirely sure why this is part of the Iceberg. I think it's probably just due to the uniqueness of the move card's effect. Because the move card's effect is that it actually cures any status condition, any stat reduction, or any move blocking effect that is currently in place on your dinosaur. And it can only be triggered twice in a battle per dinosaur, which is, you know, that's pretty unique. But apart from that, it's just really a regular move card. I guess it was just on the Iceberg because it was quite a unique move card as move cards go. But anyway, now we're moving on to Tier 5, and we're really getting into the deep parts of Dinosaur King trivia now. And starting off, we have the unreleased move cards Golden Bird and Tie Trap. Now, apparently, Golden Bird also refers to the Microraptor move card that we talked about earlier, which makes it weird considering Microraptor is basically on here twice. I guess the Microraptor bit in Tier 4 could be referring to its appearance in the anime, or the fact that in Dinosaur, its chibi was actually the Elder of Dino Village, or the fact that the Pterosaur and Dark Pterosaur from the anime appear to just be enlarged versions of the Microraptor model. I don't know, but anyway, Golden Bird refers to the Microraptor move card, whereas Tie Trap actually refers to a move card where, during a tie, your opponent will actually lose technique. Now, the JP Mango, which doesn't refer to Jurassic Park, before you all start saying that, actually refers to the Pterosaur Legend manga based on Season 2 that actually features Gomer and the Super Dinosaurs. And I've actually never seen that before, so I might actually have to check that out. The character name origins actually apparently has something to do with the Alpha Gang members being named, like, after dinosaurs. I remember Mouse mentioning something about that in the Discord, that, like, Xander was somehow named after, like, the Japanese for Spinosaurus or something along those lines. Jurassic Clash actually refers to a lost trading card game set that was apparently only released in Thailand. I'm telling you, I'm learning all sorts of weird shit about Dinosaur King from this Iceberg, like, this is weird. The unreleased revival types is kind of self-explanatory if you know the arcade. Basically, in the arcade game and in the DS game as well, dinosaurs had different types which affected how they behaved in combat. Now, the unreleased revival types actually refer to unreleased dinosaurs that had the revival type in the arcade game. The revival type was pretty overpowered in that it allowed dinosaurs to come back to life if they died during a tie. I have no idea what these unreleased revival type dinosaurs actually were, but according to the wiki, the revival type was actually reserved exclusively for fossil cards, which were special cards which actually depicted the dinosaurs as skeletons instead of how they usually look. Now, the next one, Doraemon Nobita's Dinosaur DS, is actually gonna take a little bit of explaining. Apparently, there was an anime in 1980 called Doraemon Nobita's Dinosaur. I have no idea what it was about, it just obviously had something to do with dinosaurs. Now, in 2006, there was a DS game made for that anime, and apparently, it used recolored Dinosaur King models. Which is actually funny considering it would come out 1 year before the Dinosaur King DS game, so presumably it used models from the anime. Okay, in editing, I've discovered that this one is actually a little bit more complex than I originally thought. The original Doraemon Nobita's Dinosaur was an anime film, not an anime series from 1980, and seemingly it was part of a series of movies back in the day. But the reason that the DS game came so many years later is because that was actually based off of a remake of the film that came out in 2006. So, yeah. Now, moving on, we actually have something kind of interesting, which is the contest color schemes. And this actually refers to the fact that Lexivosaurus, Albertosaurus, and Achelosaurus were color schemes made by kids in a contest. Which is actually really interesting, considering that those designs for those dinosaurs actually look really cool, considering they were made by kids. But moving on, we have the tournament prize posters, which is pretty self-explanatory in all fairness. It was just posters that were given to the winning teams of tournaments and stuff for Dinosaur King. But then we actually have something really interesting that I'm actually going to do a completely separate video on, which is the unused DS Alpha models. Because you guys know I've done a lot of things for the DS game. I've done a full playthrough, I've done compilations of all the move cards, and just to tease you guys, let's just say that I've got some really cool videos on the DS game planned for this year. But I'm actually going to do an entire video talking about all of the unused features in the DS game, and some of these were actually unused alpha dinosaurs. So you guys will have to wait for the separate video talking about those, but don't worry, that's going to be on the way soon. And finally, in Tier 5, we have the unused Spectral Space Pirate textures for the arcade game. Now, funnily enough, I've actually seen these myself because I've been playing around with the arcade models myself over the past couple of days. And what these were, it's very simple. It's just that some of the dinosaurs in the arcade game were actually meant to have the Spectral Space Pirate logo on them like they do in the anime. And these textures are still in the game files, but considering it's on here, I'm guessing they were never used in the actual arcade game itself. But anyway, that was Tier 5. Let's keep diving deeper, shall we? Starting off Tier 6, we have the Japanese character names, and that basically just refers to the fact that some of the characters actually have actual names in Japanese. There's not really much else to talk about that, so, you know, let's move on. Now, the Gekatao Zanjark machine, I guarantee you I'm not pronouncing that right, actually refers to a version of the game that is still unavailable on emulator. For those of you who don't know, there were several different iterations of the arcade game that had different dinosaurs, different story, and all of that. And most of these versions we actually have on emulator playable right now. But apparently this is a version that we still don't have, so that's interesting. Then we have Dino Master Dual Dinosaur card, which was apparently a tie show with a very strong resemblance to Dinosaur King, so it was probably just a cheap knockoff. Next up we have the Bina game, and honestly I don't really even know what to say about this one. It was a weird game apparently featuring its own physical dino holder object that you would slash cards on, and it just seems, I don't even know how to explain it. I don't even really know what it is. Is it a ripoff? It seems like just a weird ripoff of Dinosaur King that some offshoot company made, but I honestly have no idea. But moving away from that, we have the 2004 edition, which is basically in reference to pre-releases for the arcade cards. Concept art is pretty self-explanatory. It's just concept art for the anime that is apparently publicly available. Episodes banned in the Arabic dub is actually a little interesting, as Season 1, Episode 21 and 38 apparently never aired in the Arabic dub. For those of you unaware, that was No Free Lunch, which was the Euplocephalus episode in the cave, which is actually arguably one of the better episodes, and Mythical Mix-Up, which is the Stegosaurus episode. And apparently some episodes were really heavily shortened as well. Anyway, moving on to the final bit of Tier 6, we have the Engine Sentai Go-Onga crossover. Again, apologies for the very obvious butchering of the pronunciation. I am not Japanese. And this apparently just referred to an Engine Sentai character dancing to one of the Dinosaur King episode endings, so yeah, that's there, I guess. Alright, so that's tier 6 done. We're getting really deep now. Let's move on to tier 7. And we're starting off with what is definitely some of the more interesting pieces of Dinosaur King Lost media, which are the movies. Now, I say movies, plural. There is only really actually one full-length movie. This section of the Iceberg refers to a 7-minute long arcade promotion, and also a 45-minute movie shown only in Japanese planetariums. Now, this is actually something that I do know a little bit about, but in fairness, only thanks to Mouse and everyone else in the Dinosaur King Discord. Basically, this was a movie set within Season 2 that was only shown in Japanese planetariums. This movie was seemingly going to take place in the time of the dinosaurs and would have the D-Team fighting against the Spectral Space Pirates during the time where the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was about to hit the Earth. But what is undoubtedly the coolest thing about this movie is that it apparently featured 2 Platoon Crush being used by Zoe. And if you don't know, 2 Platoon Crush was an arcade exclusive grass move card which involved Supersaurus and Seismosaurus crushing an opponent dinosaur between their necks. Although apparently, according to the information we have about the movie, the move wasn't actually even used on a dinosaur, so yeah. But regardless, this is absolutely the coolest bit of Dinosaur King Lost media. Unfortunately, we literally don't have any screenshots or footage of it at all. And it's very likely that we'll never actually get any either. Literally, the only thing we have from the movie is these little bits of information and the posters for the movie. But hey, that's better than nothing, right? Now, moving on from that, we have the DS manga, which again is pretty self-explanatory in itself, but apparently in one of the Japanese magazines, there was a manga promoting the story of the DS game. I've had a brief look at it before, and seeing the dino shots in a manga is actually really cool. For those of you who don't know, the dino shots from the DS game are my personal favorite dinosaur summoning device that we see throughout the entirety of Dinosaur King, basically. Now, moving on, caps literally refers to collectible caps from 2009 that apparently featured Dinosaur King characters. So yeah, not really much to talk about there, I guess. Moving on from that, we have the Ghost and Shadow misprints. These were a couple of misprints for a couple of different arcade cards. Now, the Ghost misprint refers to a misprint of a 2007 Lielanosaura Cure card which resembled a ghost, and the Shadow misprint refers to a misprint of the Series 2 Therizinosaurus which created a shadow of the dinosaur. You can really tell that we're getting far down the iceberg now, considering I can't find a single image of either of these. Now, the Sintao manga is actually a really weird thing that apparently ties into another really weird thing that's part of the arcade. Because Sintao refers to a really weird, animated, goofy-looking Sintaosaurus that has its own arcade card. I'll pull up a picture of both the card and how it looks in the arcade, and I think you'll agree that it literally looks completely ridiculous. But apparently the origins of this really weird arcade game card actually come from a manga, and as far as I know, we genuinely know, like, nothing about this manga. Anyway, moving on from that weirdness, we actually have something pretty cool. And that is the Black T-Rex full anime card. Now, obviously, you guys remember Black T-Rex, the absolutely badass mutant evolved dinosaur from the Season 1 finale. But the weird thing about Black T-Rex is that we never actually see its anime card in full in the anime itself. Because of that, I remember as a kid, I questioned whether or not Black T-Rex actually had a card at all, or whether it was a special dinosaur that was summoned some other way. But funnily enough, you can actually see like a single frame of the Black T-Rex card in the anime itself, but we never get a full shot of it. But funnily enough, a promotional magazine actually showed Black T-Rex's card in full, and I gotta say, it looks absolutely badass. I've seen a few different people's interpretations of what the Black T-Rex card might have looked like in the anime, but frankly, I think this is as close to an official visualization as we're ever gonna get. And finally, to end off tier 7, we have the oversized showcase arcade cabinet. And apparently these refer to larger arcade machines than the regular ones which were used to showcase the game. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to the very bottom of the iceberg, the deepest of the deep, tier 8. Now, we actually only have 5 things to talk about in this tier, so let's go over them. Now, starting off, we actually have a bit of a funny one, and that's Xander's eyes, which is a thing you don't really think about until someone points it out, that Xander is literally always seen wearing glasses. You literally never see his eyes. Or apparently, we almost never see his eyes. Because apparently, we only ever see them in the Alpha Gang flashback. I'm not sure what Mouse was actually referring to there. And the 2-volume manga. Now, I don't actually have a picture of Xander's eyes to hand, but I'll try and find one to put it in editing. Okay, during editing, I was actually able to acquire an image of Xander's eyes from the manga. I was just going to bring up the image, but I have to tell you guys about this scene that we actually see his eyes in. Because the reveal of Xander's eyes, or at least one of his eyes, actually comes directly after Max has just kicked him in the balls. I genuinely could not make this shit up if I tried. But immediately after Max kicks him in the balls, we actually get to see what his eyes look like, and you've been warned. Moving on from Xander's mysterious eyes, we have the LCD game, or games as Mouse describes them. Apparently a few LCD games were released back in the day that featured different little mini games, so yeah, that's interesting. Next up, we have something that I actually find really interesting, in that Benjamin was planned for the Alpha Fortress arcade game. Now, if you don't know who Benjamin is, he was an irritator that was actually Rex's partner in the manga. Yeah, that's right. In the manga, Rex didn't have Ace as his partner. He had a water-type irritator named Benjamin. And apparently, according to unused arcade audio files, Benjamin was actually going to be in the D-Team versus the Alpha Fortress version of the arcade game. And that's pretty wild. Moving on from that, we have even more cards, but these ones are a little bit more unique. Because these cards don't have anything to do with the trading card game or the arcade game, and we literally basically know jack shit about what these cards are or where they came from. A funny little detail that I've only just noticed by looking at the cards is that it actually refers to the D-Team as being the D-Kids, which is pretty funny, honestly. And finally, at the very bottom of the Dinosaur King iceberg, we have the actual count of the platinum cards. Now, apparently, platinum cards were a prize that you could win from Dinosaur King tournaments. And I think the reason they're so mysterious is because we have no idea how many were actually made. And to be honest, they're pretty mysterious by themselves, considering I can't find a single picture depicting what they even look like. But ladies and gentlemen, that is the Dinosaur King iceberg. I'm certain there's probably some other hidden bits of trivia that weren't included in this iceberg, but I guarantee you that most of them are probably covered on this one. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysterious history of Dinosaur King and all of its obscure trivia. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and go join the Dinosaur King unofficial Discord down in the description down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys on another video very soon. Goodbye, everyone.